So I kind of have this theory that the Asian Americans who were signing up for this affirmative action to be removed out of the disguise of, oh, it's about we just want fairness in the application process. I don't think they actually cared about fairness. I really think that their whole thought process was that if they could eliminate Black people from having the opportunity, that they could themselves take up those spots. Because just think about it, like there was this idea that there's a certain amount of, percentage of selected from each demographic. And I think they cared more about eliminating one demographic so that they could take up those more percentages of those spots than they actually cared about the fairness of it all. Because if they actually wanted all fairness, they would have really went in for everything to make it where unqualified white people were getting into college.
And signing on to be used as tools of white supremacy to dismantle affirmative action did nothing to...
They're still stressed out because they're not getting accepted. They can have a 4.41 GPA, as this article notes, and still not get accepted. And a lot of the issue is the fact that people don't care about your GPA as more they care about your social skill. These schools want a well-rounded person. A 4.41 is great, but do you have social skills? And getting rid of affirmative action did nothing to really help them. There are many Asian American students who were all gung-ho on this, and yet the end results didn't assist them at all. They ignore that their biggest competition are legacy students. And just a reminder, taking away opportunities for oppressed people doesn't make your oppression go away either. As this article points out, the discrimination is still there because your last name's still on the application. The affirmative action that they wanted to get rid of did nothing to harm them or take away their chances or opportunities. It was a college decision not to accept them.
There's a long and extensive history of European colonization in Asia. The British colonized India and made repeated attempts to colonize China during the 1800s. That's why the British occupied Hong Kong until the 1990s. Southeast Asia, from India to China, was known as French Indochina because of French colonization. The Dutch colonized Taiwan, the Portuguese occupied Macau, and the French occupied Shanghai. When the transatlantic slave trade was banned, there were British and American merchants who tried to recreate it on the Pacific Ocean with enslaved Chinese men in a practice known as selling little pigs, and that's where the term to be shanghaied comes from. And of course, there was all of the U.S. military action in Korea and Southeast Asia during the 1900s. So there has been a lot of Western influence and interference in Asia. A specific problem faced by Asian Americans is the problem of the perpetual foreigner. It doesn't matter how long we've been here. It doesn't matter how many generations our families have been in the United States. It doesn't matter how loyal we've been to the United States. Just because of how we look, we are judged as not being from here, not belonging here, and being inherently suspicious. And that creates a powerful pressure to assimilate, especially when our safety can rely on how well we have assimilated. During the McCarthy era, which is when my mom came to the United States, there were Chinese Americans who had just seen Japanese Americans put in internment camps during World War II, who whitewashed themselves and became white-aligned, patriotic, flag-waving Americans just to stay safe. There are a lot of us whose parents whitewashed us in order to keep us safe. When my older brother started school, my parents enrolled him with his Chinese name because they wanted to be proud of that, and he was bullied and he was beaten up for it. Even years after they switched to his Western name, students who remembered his Chinese name continued to bully and beat him up for it. So 7 years later, when I started school, my parents enrolled me in school using my Western name, which means that I wasn't bullied and beaten up for having a Chinese name, but it also means that part of my identity has been whitewashed. And that's not the same thing as being obsessed with white culture or seeking validation from white people. It is done to keep us safe from anybody who would weaponize our Asianness against us. Sure, I'd love to explain. It's because in the United States, there is a long history of discrimination against Asian Americans in higher education admissions policies, but it has nothing to do with Black people nor affirmative action. It's interesting how those studies never point out that if Asian Americans have the highest average standardized test scores by race, then not only are they having to score higher than Black applicants in order to be considered, Asian Americans are also having to score higher than white applicants to be considered. Now, up until 2 weeks ago, affirmative action was constitutionally permitted positive racial discrimination due to the government's compelling interest in redressing historical harms that disadvantaged Black and Native American students in higher education. So with affirmative action, that's as it should be, that both Asian American and white students should have to score higher than Black and Native American students to be considered. But why should Asian American students have to score higher than white students in order to be considered? And in the 1980s, when the United States Department of Education was investigating UC Berkeley, and UC Berkeley explicitly admitted to discriminating against Asian Americans, it was understood that had nothing to do with Black people nor affirmative action. That was relative to the acceptance rate of white students. But over time, discrimination against Asian Americans became conflated with affirmative action for the purposes of divide and conquer, and I believe ultimately to sabotage affirmative action. That courts have repeatedly held that affirmative action does not discriminate against white people shows that it's possible to implement affirmative action in a way that does not discriminate against Asian Americans. It's that colleges and universities choose not to. Now, for people who are saying that admissions in higher education is a zero-sum game, it is not. Programs are able to expand to accommodate population growth. We're able to expand to accommodate more women attending higher education, and can definitely expand to accommodate equitable racial representation. Again, it's that colleges and universities choose not to.
Now, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, Africans. I hope you're faring well where you are, and if you ain't faring well, please fare well where you are. Now, we understand that the United States of America is a country which is of multi-races. We have different races that went there through different means. The white people went there after Christopher Columbus exposed his lies to the Europeans, and they discovered new lands to them. So that is how the Europeans came. Some of them came here escaping the world wars, right? And also we have the Black people. The Black people came even as earlier than many of these white people that we know today. The Black people went there through slavery. And then also we had the Chinese, we had the Indians, we had the Vietnamese, right? So the Chinese and the Indians went to India voluntarily. It was not like Black people who went there forcefully. The Europeans went there voluntarily. The Chinese went there voluntarily, except for the Blacks. The Latinos also went to America voluntarily. And so it is as if these other communities, with which I have not named all of them, went there and they invaded, right? They were invaders, they were intruders to a new land that did not belong to them. The original land of America belonged to the Red Indians. These are the original inhabitants of that land called United States of America. Now, there was a genocide that happened where the Spanish and some of these European countries were trying to wipe out the original inhabitants of this newfound land of United States of America. Surprisingly, something is happening, and what's happening right now is that the Europeans, the Asians are really contemplating things that are really not so friendly against Black people. They are contemplating that if it were possible to them, they would have wiped out the Black people out of existence, but it is not into their power, right? So I want you to listen to this video and give me your thoughts. Share your thoughts. I will give you my thoughts, where we shall also have a deep critical analysis of the events by the end of this video. Now let's dive in without further ado.
Oh, it didn't go well? The white people didn't welcome you with open arms? Reading this article and other articles that I've read about this, it just seemed like they thought that when the Supreme Court made the decision that they would have automatically kicked out every single Black person in the school. That's what they thought was going to happen. But now it's even harder, because it's getting harder every single year. We just watched a bunch of celebrities and rich people buy their kids' seats into these Ivy League schools and cheat to get in. No smoke for them, though. The problem is anti-Blackness. That's the damn fucking problem. Because why would you align yourself with white supremacists? Sure, they don't like us, but they don't like you either. These people have been trying to get rid of affirmative action for years now. They finally did it with their help. And it's not faring very well for them, because it was never about their affirmative action. It was about why we need affirmative action to begin with. this, like this woman said in the video, it doesn't explain it doesn't fix any of the problems that we've been having. None. It just made things more complicated, more messy. There was a woman in one of the articles that I read who said that a girl whose mother had cancer was lucky because that's what got her in. Because you need adversity, you need like a struggle, and that's the only reason why she got in, because her mother had cancer. Because she was able to use that in her college essay. When they see these black kids in school, they don't think, oh, that's a fellow classmate. They think, oh, how did this end get in here? Because this end doesn't deserve to be here. This person stole a seat that belonged to somebody else. That's the damn issue, because everybody coming in here has a high GPA. You need at least a 3.8 to get in here, and people have 5.2s. And now in the articles, they're not blaming black people anymore. They're blaming these like college advisors, people they pay stacks of money to help them get into these schools. They're blaming them. It's shifted now, but it's like the damage has been done. We already see what's going on. Like I said, they may not like us, but they.
Well, what do you know? Surprise, surprise. We tried to tell them. Black people tried to tell them. Black people tried to tell a small group of Asians that included Yeting Chu and the Asian kid from Canada that working with white supremacist Ed Bloom will not give you better chances in getting into these elite colleges like Harvard and Yale. A group of people of color worked with a white supremacist who's been working for decades to gut affirmative action and gut voting rights so that he can stifle the growth of black people in this country. And black people tried to tell Asians like Miss Yeting Chu that black people wasn't the biggest group who benefited from affirmative action, that it was white women. But no, they didn't want to listen to us. They didn't want to listen to us when we said that white supremacists have made black people the face of certain benefits in this country when we aren't the biggest recipients of these benefits. Affirmative action, welfare. We aren't the biggest benefits of these actions. But this small group of Asians, who I believe were anti-black, are anti-black, continue to press forward to work with this white supremacist to stifle and push down black people so that they can elevate and have better chances in getting into these elite colleges and universities. Black people tried to tell this small group of Asians that Ed Bloom, a white supremacist, is using you as pawns to get his agenda completed. Black people tried to tell this small group of Asians that it's not black people here in the United States that you are competing with. You're competing with legacy students. You're competing with athletes. You are competing with black students all across the diaspora. And so now that we are in the first application season since the overturning of affirmative action, Asian students are stressed out. They're freaking out because they are now realizing that race will still be a factor when they submit their applications. Why? Because there's no hiding your name, Asian students. And now that you are realizing that, you are also realizing that racist white people who work in these positions, in these offices that hold your future in their hands, they will continue to be racist towards you. Yep. We tried to tell Asians like Miss Chu that Ed Bloom was using them as pawns. And she got indignant and went over on her Twitter account and said, telling us we are pawns is demeaning and belittles our fight for our civil rights in America. What Miss Chu fails to realize is that when you, as a member of a minority group, goes after a benefit, a right that they believe affects another minority group only, and you work to get that benefit removed so that you can benefit, because you can't tell me Miss Chu doesn't think that the only reason black people get into Yale and Harvard is because of affirmative action. And Asians like Miss Chu said we need to get rid of affirmative action because black people shouldn't be in Harvard and Yale because we are more smart, we are more deserving. So we're going to work to knock out this minority group so that we can benefit. And now, all of these kids who are getting ready for college are now realizing that, yeah, racist white people will continue to be racist white people. And now there's no quota that they have to meet. So what are they doing? They are meeting with academic consultants and paying tens of thousands of dollars to start preparing their children in junior high school. They are paying thousands of dollars to go to seminars so these coaches can tell them and guide them on how best to get into these elite colleges. They are taking 10 to 20 advanced placement courses, hoping that it'll boost them so that they can get into these elite colleges. That's what they're doing. And they are doing all of this in the hopes of battling the extreme discrimination that they know that they will now face. They can't hide behind the race. Their name on the application will tell the racist white person that's evaluating their application everything they need to know about that student. And now the light bulb has gone off. This is what you call cutting off your nose to spite your face. And in other news, water is wet.
Well, in news this morning, I would like to talk about an article from the LA Times in regards to post-affirmative action. Asian American families are more stressed than ever about college admissions. Now listen, if you have been following this, you remember there was a certain person who sued and demanded that affirmative action be removed, was successful, and the Supreme Court said, sure, we'll remove it. But let's take a look at what has happened to the Asian community since then. Now listen, this is not about being anti-Asian or anything like this, but the conversation must be had. You can stop and read. The conversation must be had about how the solidarity between people of color, POC, will need to be discussed obviously in a more nuanced level. But here we see how the Asian community absolutely will come together in multiple ways to ensure that their children get into these colleges. I think the conversation needs to be had with the Asian community. And before anybody comes for me, because you can't, I'm half Asian. I know that phenotypically, I don't look it. depending on the lighting and depending on how I wear my hair. But this type of cultural difference is not going to get your kids into Harvard. These extra pushes are not going to get them into MIT. These are legacy schools. These schools are not built for ethnic people. Okay? And the proof is right here. It's going to be harder for Asians, they say, to get in. Full disclosure, I'm a mom of 4. I have one already in college, one in about 2 years. One didn't take any AP classes, didn't take any extracurricular. He played football. That's a different story. But my next one, currently taking AP classes, not because I want her to push to get into Columbia, where she probably wants to go, although we've had that conversation. She needs to go to mommy school. No, I'm just playing. Because I got legacy status. Why wouldn't you go to the school where I have legacy status? She wants to go to a school where she doesn't have legacy status. Then she needs to be prepared for those who have legacy status. She has a great resume, top 5 to 10 percentile in the city, does all the right things. I'm already preparing her for the obvious, which is widen your pool, don't stress. College is about experience more than it is about education. And this is coming from someone who has several degrees. Well, just 2. Working on the 3rd.
I just read this. Post-affirmative action, Asian American families are more stressed than ever about college admissions. We're talking about Harvard and Stanford, those schools. I really don't know what's clicking. It's going to be hard to get into Harvard. No matter what, it's always going to be hard to get into these schools. There are so many schools, good schools in every single state. You don't have to go to those 5, 7 schools. It's not that many of those. And they're not taking in everyone. Like, they just can't. They can't. They won't. They can't and they won't. We know that they won't, which is why we had the affirmative action to begin with. But now they don't even have to do that. So they sure ain't letting y'all in for real now.
The college application process can be so overwhelming and so stressful for all types of students and families. But the LA Times had a recent article that just came out describing how Asian American families and students are really feeling overwhelmed and stressed out, especially since the Supreme Court ruling in June that struck down affirmative action in college application and admissions decisions. But who originally brought that lawsuit to the court in the first place? Let's investigate. In the first college application season since the Supreme Court struck down affirmative action, Asian American families are more stressed out than ever about college admissions. As this commenter here said, I wonder why that is. After the affirmative action ruling, Asian Americans ask, what happens next? And to that I say, welcome. Welcome to the stress that we have all been feeling since forever. Because we tried to warn you. We told you this would happen. When you align yourself with certain people and certain factions, thinking that they'll open their arms to you and they'll want you on their campuses and they'll welcome you with open arms. Look, they played you. They did the old rope-a-dope, the okey-doke on you. And you can thank this man right here, Edward Bloom, who helped that young man bring that court case to the Supreme Court to end affirmative action in college admission processes. Edward Bloom, who's famous for his activism against affirmative action, yeah, that Edward Bloom is the reason why y'all are now feeling stressed out post that decision in June. Because Asian American students felt that they were being discriminated against and that Black American kids were taking all the spots on Ivy League campuses. Legacy admissions were the ones taking your spots, not us. However, did you know that there are tons of scholarships that you can apply to? Oh, wait, those are now under attack also. People are now actively trying to get rid of minority and ethnic and diversity scholarships because they discriminate against other types of people. In college admissions, there are no guarantees. 10 AP classes, a stacked resume, dual enrollment, none of that matters. All the money in the world and private college counselors can't compete with someone who's a legacy from an Ivy League school.
Oh, look at that. Asian Americans signing on to be used as tools of white supremacy to dismantle affirmative action did nothing to address the discrimination faced by Asian Americans in college admissions. Because dismantling affirmative action didn't address the fact that selective colleges admit Asian American applicants at a rate 28% less than similarly qualified white applicants. It's almost like the discrimination faced by Asian Americans in college admissions never had anything to do with black students or affirmative action, and had everything to do with legacy admissions and the choices that colleges make to discriminate against Asian Americans in order to give preferential treatment to lesser qualified white students. If only black people had tried to warn us. Oh wait, they did. Colleges admit Asian American applicants at a rate 28% less than similarly qualified.
I'm sure the person that I stitched already knows this, but if not, here's some information for you and for anybody else watching this. The person who led the charge to get affirmative action repealed, like the thing that was like Asian Americans against affirmative action, or whatever the organization was called, that was a white man. And he found a couple Asian people to be like, tell us your story of why you didn't get accepted because of affirmative action. There is a culture of Asian Americans being like, it's not fair. But overall, it's not, overall, for most Asian Americans, doesn't exist. That was one white man who did it and used Asian American, like the book Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. It was like that, but with fucking Congress or Supreme Court, excuse me.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares that you are trying to be perfect or you're climbed to perfectionism. Nobody cares. The people at the admissions office don't care. You want to know why they don't care? It's because they aren't perfect and they never strive for perfectionism. The thing that many Asian Americans didn't see, and possibly still don't see, is that nobody cares. How much money you spend on preparing and your GPA can be 7. What you're failing to see with all of your academic achievements is this. You're failing to see reality. Reality trumps academics. See, reality is this. Those who are over admissions are people, and people are not perfect. And those same people are going to choose who they want. And because you got rid of affirmative action, see, you made it even easier for them to choose who they want to come to their schools. Also, you didn't think about this because reality trumps academics. There may be some of those same people who are pretty pissed and don't like perfectionists, or those who feel like they should have been ahead of somebody because they made a whole 9, 10, 11, 12 points higher. Sometimes people tend to look at people like that as they feel entitled to something. And that can bite you in the butt, because if you feel entitled to something just because of some random classes you took or the thousands of dollars you paid to prepare, then in their minds, they may disqualify you. Now, if they write that on paper, that's something different. But you need to think about reality, because reality always trumps academia.
This is unfortunate. I'd have the Ivy blues, too, if after 21 AP credits, stressing myself out for these SAT scores, paying a consultant thousands of dollars to review my application, and I still don't get chosen. All those book smarts, and somehow it is not translating to critical thinking skills, because now Edward Bloom now has a license to go around and destroy any mentorship program, grants, scholarship programs for special populations. Gone. Was it worth it? The Fearless Fund, he's already annihilated that a grant program that was helping a population of less than 1% to gain some sort of opportunity, just a little bit of money to start a business. Was it worth it?
So now that we've teamed up and worked together to sort of, finally strike down this affirmative action that was keeping our well-performing Asian students out of these Ivy League schools, we're finally going to see more of us in those schools, right? Right?
Sorry, pal. I think we're actually just going to sneak in a few more legacies. But it was nice working with you, though.
Oh. Wait, so you just used us?
Used is a little harsh, don't you think?
Oh.
What?
No, they wouldn't.
No, they didn't do... What? No, you're telling me they used you? They used racial tensions to... What? No. No, they wouldn't. Nah. No, who would have thought? Not me.
Since you ask, black people in the United States on average were more successful than Asian Americans up until the 1950s and 60s when the United States started pushing the model minority myth. If you look at census data from the 1940s, black people were earning significantly more than Asian people. But the United States was engaging in military actions in Asia under the guise of bringing democracy and fighting against communism when the rest of the world started to wonder, with the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II, the Chinese Exclusion Act, and Jim Crow, what business did the United States have being in another continent telling other countries how to operate when they treat their own people so poorly? That's when the United States started to say, no, Asians are doing great. They work hard, they're quiet, they don't protest, and they are lifting themselves up by their bootstraps out of poverty. The problem is black people who are protesting. And opportunities that were previously withheld from both black and Asian people started being provided to Asian people and continued to be withheld from black people. Then in 1964, when the Civil Rights Amendment finally passed and black people were supposed to receive equitable access to those opportunities, in 1965, the United States opened the door to Asian immigration with the Hart-Celler Act and continued giving those opportunities to Asian people. Very importantly, the ability and resources to open, own, and operate businesses in black neighborhoods, which effectively deprived black people of the ability to invest in their own neighborhoods. Now, in case you're still thinking, no, it really is about emphasis on education, by the 1980s, an Asian American without a high school diploma was earning about the same as a white person without a high school diploma, and both were earning significantly more than a black person without a high school diploma. So that has nothing to do with educational attainment and everything to do with the opportunities provided. But also that you inserted yourself in a conversation between two Asian Americans to weaponize Asian American identity against black people is just gross.
To all of the East Asian Americans who think that you are oh so different than all these Latino communities that are getting ripped apart by ICE and think that your pale skin is going to protect you somehow, you are being fucking delusional. Like, it's barely been one full lifetime since we've seen something very similar happen to our very own communities in this country. My great-grandparents' house was seized and taken from them by the U.S. government, and they had to live in the sugarcane fields because the U.S. government was detaining legal United States citizens. My great-grandparents were born and raised in the United States, and so were many of their peers, and yet our communities were getting torn apart, our shrines being destroyed by the government, and in the case of Oahu, Hawaii, where 5 generations of my family have been born and raised by now, the island was essentially turned into a militarized state. My great-grandparents never got their house back, and the land that their house used to be on is currently military housing. Which is why, as a Japanese American, I look at other East Asian Americans and I just don't understand how you cannot have just a small shred of empathy for these families that are getting ripped apart for no fucking reason. And like I said, my family has been here for 5 generations, and yet I am still scared for my young cousins who are going off to college soon, and they're going to be by themselves for the first time, and all of our aunties and grandparents are telling them, make sure you carry your passport around with you everywhere you go, because you just don't know. Anyway, my point is that we have to have solidarity with each other because we are so much more similar than we are different. And for the love of God, please, if you're not going to do anything else, at least share resources. It takes like less than 10 seconds.
So, given what I have just listened to right now, it's so sad. It's a sad thing that people who are also visitors to a country, people who are also new to a country, consider their fellow visitors who did not choose to go there, by the way, as a threat. You know, it is mind-blowing. It is insane, right? It's like the kettle calling the other kettle, look at you, you are black. But they are also, both of them are black because they go under the same fire, right? Now I'm here and I'm thinking about this. When and how should black people deal with such situations? When and how should black people deal with such situations? That is a very important question. And the question can be answered in different ways. But the first way I always think of it is the American government has proven many times, it has proven countless times, it cannot and it's not there for the black people. No, United States of America was built by the black people, but not for the black people. And therefore, we can't really rely on the government. And also these people are speaking these things out because they know by the end of the day, we will take them nowhere. The black person is just the undermined race in the USA, right? That's the first thing. We can't go to the government. Now we put it X. The second one is preaching the message of love. Yes, preaching the message of love to these people, telling them how it's important for there be love between us, for there to be love among us. This love that is of God transcends races, transcends age, transcends regions, because God commands us to be one. He tells us that he created us in his own image and likeness. There's nobody who is having a more image and likeness of God than another one. Be you black, be you white, be you brown, you all have the image of the Most High God. Right? Yes. And then the third one is, the other option the black people should take is moving back to the continent. Yes, I have preached this message for some times now, telling you guys about moving back to the continent. Come to the continent, enjoy what Africa can offer you. Because Africa, when a black man walks around, we don't see a black man. We don't see a black man. We see an African. We see a human being, right? It's not like you're walking somewhere in Europe or in the USA and, oh, a black man is walking here. He's 10 feet tall, this and that. He's trying to rob me. No. In Africa, you walk, nobody will tell if you are an African or if you are a black American, right? When a Senegalese walks here, we don't see a Senegalese. When a Ghanaian walks here, we don't see a Ghanaian. We see a brother, we see a sister, we see a mom, we see a dad, we see a kid, we see a baby. So Africa is one way to abolish, to rebuke all such kind of nonsense. I mean, Africa, we still have people with some weird mindset, but according to the scale, it's very negligible compared to how it is back in the States, right? So I'm here and I'm thinking, Asians say black people are the major threat. Black people have always and are the ones who made it possible. They made the way for these people calling themselves Asians. They even gave them the right to speak all these that they are doing today, right? It is us, through our labor, through our punishment. It is through our sweat that these people are able to come and speak nonsense, right? So coming together of black people will be so much important. These people are always united. For instance, Indians in Kenya, very much united. Like my two fingers are crossed, very much united. In their business, very much united. But when you look at the African counterpart, it's different. The African counterpart, it's not the same. It's not likely. We don't have unity. But once we take that disunity away and press unity, people will fear us, people will respect us. Yes. That is my thoughts. You may want to share your thoughts on the comment section. I may want to listen to your thoughts. Yes. Please do that on the comment section. I'll be glad, and we will continue the discussion further. Yes. This is EFK Original Documentaries. You like what I do? Subscribe. I'll surely appreciate.